Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'd like to welcome Rex Harrison, the COO from Generis. He'll be presenting from our side today, as well as Frank Trone, the Head of Global Sales from FME. We're very lucky to have them both on board today, and they'll be talking to you about a case study, also our partnership, and a little bit about the CARA AI. Anyway, I will now hand over to Rex for the first part of our presentation.
Thanks, Cara. I'm just going to give a brief introduction into Generis and CARA, our kind of flagship low-code platform, and then we'll hand over to Frank and FME to run us through the archiving use case, and then we'll come back at the end just to basically run a short video on CARA AI. So just in terms of Generis, so CARA is in use at the moment in over 140 countries, and we have over 1 million industry users spread primarily across life sciences, but also a number of regulated industries like financial services and local authorities. The company was founded in 2002 in the UK, and our headquarters is in the UK, and we currently have staff in over 19 countries. We have experienced really high growth in the last 6 years since the launch of our CARA 5 product, growing kind of fourfold in that time. Just a selection of some of our customers. So I mentioned that we have a number of life sciences customers. So you hopefully see and recognize a number of names there, some local authority customers and financial services. And just in terms of scale of our deployments, we have customers that have as few as 50 users and customers that run with about 150,000 users. So CARA 5 is cost effective to use, but also scalable, where we have very large customers requiring to use it. And just in terms of the CARA platform, so CARA itself is an enterprise content management system. The platform is low code. It provides all of the kind of standard features that you would expect from a enterprise content management or a document management system, but also includes advanced features like reporting, dashboards, workflow, and what we'll be talking about a little bit later on is the generative AI and AI itself. This platform was used by FME to build the archiving solution, and obviously FME will be talking about that a little bit later. So just briefly, and we'll come on to this with the video a little bit later. So what is unique about CARA AI? So the AI features are end user enabled. We are able to plug in one or multiple large language models. So we're not basically tied to a specific large language model. We are also able to use the AI to not only just talk and query the LLM, but also to use that to be able to create content and transition content in the same way that users would be used to manually. And because of the kind of the massive scalability of the CARA AI platform, we are also able to aggregate data from other systems and use the AI to be able to interrogate and work with that data in a way that other systems are not able to do. And one unique thing about CARA is that the security, which ensures that users can only access and view content and metadata that they are entitled to view, is also honored by the AI as well. So we don't have the ability, the concern of AI circumventing the security controls that are in place. And then just final slide before I hand over to Frank. So just the FME partner spotlight. So FME have been a preferred partner of Generis since 2016, and they provide services in Europe and North America and have over 20 years ECM industry experience. They are a trusted advisor to many life sciences and other regulatory industry companies, and they provide a number of different services, including data migration, integration, configuration, and end user support services. We have combined with FME to deliver multiple successful projects that implementing CARA and also migrating data with FME's flagship migration center product. And in the last few years, FME have become a build partner with Generis and have been building solutions on CARA 5 with their many certified consultants. So just a brief introduction to Generis, CARA, and FME. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Frank. Thank you, Frank.
So yeah, thanks everyone for participating in the webinar today, and thank you, Caroline and Rex, for the start of it and kind of giving the backdrop of the CARA platform, and of course, giving some spotlight to our partnership and our ongoing collaboration, in the market. So thank you for that. So I'm Frank Dentrone, President and Head of Business Development. I'm going to walk you through a few things. So we covered the first item. I'm going to give you a little overview about FME, brief about FME Life Sciences. We're going to then get into the case study, this archiving solution and migration that we've performed with a client in Life Sciences. A little background of Migration Center. And as Rex said, we'll pivot over to get a glimpse, a little summary of the recording on CARA's AI capability. And of course, we'll have a Q&A session. So I'm not going to read all that. This is for those who want to get a glimpse, but I've been in the market for many years. I'll give you a short version. Heavily in regulated industries, predominantly life sciences. I've come from a delivery background, so have quite a bit of technical experience and kind of still relevant these days in certain key accounts that I'm working with. But we'll get a little further into the solution in a second where I'll give you a little more storyline about our technical solution. So from FME, I don't have sort of the stats, but I'm going to give you a short background about FME. So FME started back in the late 90s. So we've been around quite some time in Europe. And fast forward, and we're predominantly heavily in document management, content management. So in 2010, we founded North America, and that's where I come into the picture myself. And we built out our team here in the States to complement FME's, capabilities, globally. So with that said, we provide, holistically end-to-end migration and digital transformation services. And you're going to learn today about the case study and how we applied that to a client of ours. So it's a holistic transformation. So it's from a business process strategy through implementation, migration services, and post-implementation services. And actually, this case study is perfect because it really demonstrates sort of the end-to-end, capabilities that we bring to the table. So you're going to learn more about that in just a moment. So the case study itself, so what the challenge, right? Why, right? Why did this client need this, why did they need this? What was their reasoning, sort of the on hand? What did they need? What triggered it? So there's a few things that stand out. For one, it was outdated architecture. So they had a legacy system that's been there quite some time, many years. There's some redundancy in those systems. They had more than one. So there was 2 platforms in particular that was in the scope of this project. And they were looking at cost constraints, cost implications of maintaining the current legacy systems. And of course, given that it's an archive and it's life sciences, there's by definition, regulatory and compliance considerations and risks, right? So those were sort of the main drivers of why this engagement, why this initiative. Just to give a little color on sort of the volume, and this was just the initial scope, and it's still ongoing in terms of sheer volume. So it was 13 terabytes across 2 repositories, and somewhere in the 65 million, documents or records, if you will, that was needed to be migrated. And there's ongoing, requests that are going into the platform. So this is just the initial baseline starting point. So why FME? Why did they come to us? So similar to our relationship with Generis in terms of that collaboration and strategic partnership as well. We had the same and still have the same relationship with this particular client. So more than 15 years providing migration services and implementation services. I think it's closer to 20 years actually. And it's at scale because there's a large pharma customer that has a lot of content and data, as you can imagine. We bring, and Rex alluded to it, deep technical knowledge on experience implementing the CARA platform. So obviously that's a plus, and the proven migration expertise, best practices, and accelerators. And the key point here is at scale, right? Large scale migrations. Because doing a few 100,000 documents is one thing, but doing, double-digit millions and double-digit terabytes is another, right? And we're going to see a little bit about migration, the tooling itself, and how we scale that. And I'll share a little more color on that in a moment. So wanted to highlight a few things, given the regulation, because of the regulated industry, life sciences in particular, GXP processes and requirements. So these were sort of key areas that we needed, that had to be considered as part of this whole initiative, right? These are just highlights. So system decommissioning support, right? Enabling that, having a solution that has a comprehensive records archiving, and decommissioning, so they could decommission the legacy systems. Being able to, selective archive, so being able to archive, pieces, parts, sections, certain areas of data and documents, was another key point, key requirement. Dealing with divestiture, right? Contractual, or so I guess M&A, if you will, and divesting was another key consideration and requirement. So having a platform that could adapt to those types of processes, and life cycle based archiving. So where you have, an initial record and document that's brought into the system, and then based on triggers and like a trigger point, that would then enforce the retention for a period of time. So that was another key requirement from a records management perspective. And then having an integrated search and, getting data in is one thing, but be able to consume it in an efficient way is another. So that another really important item. And then standardize an archiving framework, so a platform that can adapt, and you'll learn more about the solution and sort of the ongoing things, and why CARA, right? So an adaptable platform, cloud ready, cloud and born in the cloud, and we're going to learn more about that type of architecture in a moment. So I wanted to cover some key features, because it's important, of course, for you to get a little more, substance on what was the solution, what was the need, what was the requirements, what were the functions of the platform from a client perspective. So a couple of key items I wanted to call out. So repository structure and security. So there's a concept, this root folder concept. And for those who are like me, we come from the cabinets and folders days, right? So I'm definitely more in the search in recent times, but we needed to have the ability to bring in, based on the user patterns, a mix, right? A search model and a foldering model. So we worked collaboratively with the Generis team to make sure this feature was in place, and they gracefully have incorporated that feature. And so now we have this sort of cabinet model, which basically is a archiving area, and you'll learn more about that in a moment, is where you can navigate the foldering, the cabinet. This archive area is like a cabinet, and within that structure, there's a series of folders, and from an organizational perspective, that based on some metadata. So that, and then applying, permissions really. So this archive area cabinet has, think of it like a line of business or a functional area that has, particular security constraints that on that data set, right? So I wanted to point that out, was a key feature, to be able to do quick search and advanced search, based on individual properties or attributes, or all attributes, or within the content itself in the archive. So all of that is part of the platform. So that was another key feature I wanted to mention. And then of course, audit trail reporting. So both from migrated data and ongoing, incremental net new archives. So in both cases, the audit trail is available, and audit trail reports can be produced and put into an Excel format if necessary. And then from a user, like system roles and capabilities, so wanted to call out 4 roles. There's the standard consumer. So I'm a user that needs access to the archive, or let's say archive areas within the archive based on my role or functional area within the organization. So they can consume, find and consume content records, in certain cases be able to export that content for various business reasons, and also view and export audit trail if necessary. So that's sort of the consumer role. The archivist is really, let's say it's closer to a business power user, right? So they have the ability to archive content in an existing archive area, and I wanted to just call it like cabinet folder approach. So there's areas within the folders and sections within the archive area where an archivist can bring content into existing folders or structures, or actually create new ones, right? And again, the permissioning is all adhered to within the archive area. And in some cases, they can, when needed, they can promote content to archived, which brings it under retention. So it enforces the retention schedule. And when necessary, there's some metadata that can be corrected or updated while documents or records are within the draft status. So I wanted to mention that for that role. And then the IT archivist, this is, let's say, more of a power user, but from an IT perspective. So they can create archive areas, they can apply necessary permissions. There's a model where the requester that needs this new archive area will get notified, and then they can also adjust metadata after retention's applied. But I wanted to make a very important call out. It's all managed through and audited, right? So there's a reason for change, it's audited, it's tracked. So any change to a record that's under retention needs to be done accordingly, and it is. And just wanted to mention that. And then manage users and groups and apply legal holds. So that's sort of the RT archivist role. And the archive admin is really platform, right? They're really dealing with lifting legal holds, viewing logs, like all the things you can imagine. That's more from an IT platform level type of role and capabilities. So those were the key features of the platform from a business perspective and usability. So how did we go about doing this? So I wanted to give you a little color on, the methodology, we followed to get to the outcome that the client required. And for one, it's the preparation, right? Preparing and planning. I can't say that enough. It's really having stakeholder alignment, really setting expectations, identifying business owners and IT, the various stakeholders in question, and really having a well-defined success criteria. Follow that through requirements gathering, as you could imagine, a standard SDLC process, looking at the system landscape, looking at existing platforms, looking at it both from a solution and from a migration, right? So starting off net new with nothing in it is one thing, but starting a platform where you're going to bring in, 13 terabytes of data is another, really. So merely phasing this, designing this architecture and landscape appropriately based on the sheer volume in question, and having a roadmap definition. Are we doing phase? And there's options. In this case, there was some phase and big bang elements. So we had business requirements where they wanted to start using the platform right at technical go live, and then also bring in data, ongoing from a migration perspective. So we're sort of provided both of those as part of the business rollout. So then we transitioned from preparation and planning to solution design. And I talked a teeny bit about this. I'm not going to go, say a lot of this over again, but information architecture, user, platform schemas, data models took place, and all part of the requirements gathering process and use case development. UI configuration, as you heard, low code. So this was all configuration, no custom coding, if you will. Applying the necessary security and compliance items to the implementation, which I talked a little bit about on the key features. And another thing, which I'm going to probably say this a few times throughout, the next 30 minutes or so, is around automation and provisioning. Given that the CARA platform, it's modern capabilities and on AWS architecture, really enabled a provisioning model, which I have a few call outs on this, fully automated, right? And even release management, fully automated with the client. We'll talk about that in a moment. So I want to continue a little bit. I said a few things, but I'm going to just highlight it one more time. So in the configuration and development, I said low code, really configuration. I can't say that enough. So you don't need to be a programmer or a software developer to implement this type of platform and solution. We brought in validation and testing, so providing unit and integration and UAT, all the things you can imagine from a life sciences brought to the table as part of the implementation. Deployment and change management, so there was training, train the trainer type of things that we provided to the client, helping them establish updates to SOPs and user guides, because again, we're replacing an existing archive, so that was part of the puzzle. And then providing hypercare as a post go live and ongoing support services was part of this particular case study. Given we've been there, like I said earlier, over 15 years in both implementations and support services. And lastly, governance and continuous improvement, really looking at the platform, defining, features or enhancements, or dealing with just release management as part of, keeping the platform up to date, over the course of, year over year, looking at metrics and monitoring, adoption and usage. All of those were part of the, the governance and continuous improvement process. So the results, right? So at the end of the day, what was the outcome, right? What was the outcome of the solution? So a few call outs and highlights. Unified archive. So went from multiple systems to a unified archiving platform based on CARA. We have a cloud native architecture. I mentioned that a little while ago, where it enables scalability. Given it's AWS, it's fully embracing the AWS services that are available. So totally dynamic, both from a provisioning and from a scaling perspective. Fast time to value, given the low code, right? So we were able to, configure, didn't need any software coding, if you will. Metadata model accelerators, leveraging some purpose-built accelerators that are provided by the CARA platform itself. And then lastly, compliance and auditability. So being able to adapt to regulatory requirements, having, being audit ready, and really enforcing those retention policies that are crucial for this solution. So it's not only putting the retention on, adhering to the legal hold, but also dispositioning when it's appropriate, right? All of that is crucial for this type of platform, right? And a records management archive. And you're going to see I want to just do a quick highlight on the horizon, and we'll see a little video at the tail end of the webinar, where we're looking at the AI features around. Think of it like, as I said earlier, the ongoing archiving, small demand, bringing things in, having an AI, as part of that process, we're thinking can provide a ton of value to the client, the end user experience. So those are things we're looking at moving forward, and you'll learn a little bit more about, the AI, CARA's AI capabilities. As Rex said, there'll be a small video at the end. So I couldn't have this webinar without talking a little bit about migration, because getting the solution in place is one thing, but then migrating, 65 million or 13 plus terabytes of content into the platform is another. So I wanted to spend a few minutes on the migration aspects of things, and a little about us, or about the product, the platform itself. So Migration Center been around over 20 years, probably closer to 25 years now. So been around quite some time, has a variety of capabilities and what we call source and target connectors. So we come from many places to many sources to targets, and we have a very clear process. We collect data from the source and we classify it. We then apply rules, and then apply those rules in the middle, and then migrate, and then we apply, and then we verify. So it's classify, migrate, verify. Simple terms, simple to understand. That's the big picture in terms of the process, and I'm going to cover a little bit more in terms of our methodology around migration in a moment. So I wanted to touch a teeny bit about the architecture around Migration Center, because of the scale needs. We tend to get the larger migrations these days. So we need to be able to scale. And one thing I want to mention is central migration data. So Migration Center has a database component, and actually wanted to make another call out. We've historically supported Oracle, and we still do, but we also support Postgres, right? So there's some benefits to having both. And so think of it source, we have a Migration Center, the job server component, and you'll see on the next slide where we scale that. We have the database in the middle, and then similarly, we have job servers on the right-hand side. So think of it scaling on collecting and scaling on the target importing, right? So we have scaling, so one-to-end scalability on both ends of the migration process. It's all centrally maintained. All the transformation rules are within the data model and the database. We're able to take that from a dev, val, production, right? So you have a validated process to bring the migration configurations across the environments. And we sort of decouple the data from the source system. So we grab the data from the source in a proprietary, whatever the source system's format, we decouple it, and then we normalize that data to bring it into the new target proprietary format, depending on where we're going. So that's sort of the framework, and the key point was the database, that centralized location where all the rules and metadata is stored. And then from managing large scale, this is where I wanted to just call out source, and then you have one-to-end job servers on either end, right? So this is just a simple diagram, a little more complicated when you're on the ground, but at the end of the day, we have one-to-end scalability on the left side and right side of the migration process, and we're leveraging that on large scale migrations. So from a overall methodology around document and data migration, this holds true for data-centric migrations and document-centric migrations. We have a discovery phase. We do we call it sort of a phase 0, where we understand what's going on, basically the data, what are the business, what's the charter, what are we looking at in terms of source data, figure out those requirements, any regulatory requirements, and then once that discovery is complete, we go into a design and development phase where we establish technical architecture, we do the scaling, we establish transformation rules, mapping specifications, all of the things you can imagine in a migration. All of that goes through a process that can be validated. We establish the validation approach. Are we testing, we're verifying all data, sampling, or combination of both? We go through a vicious cycle of rigorous cycle, I would say, in controlled environments, but non-production. That happens in a series of dry runs. So think of it: design, development, dry run, iterative. Once we come out of that process, we go into a verification phase where we check all records, all metadata against the spec, making sure we validate that and then bring that into production. We do metric-based, we do incremental migrations where needed, depending on sheer volume and cutover requirements and freeze window requirements. And then it goes into a hypercare. So again, I'm giving you the big broad picture to give you sort of a feeling of the overall methodology that we follow on all of our migrations. I'm not going to read all this. This was more for takeaways, but again, some sub-bullets, some highlights within each of the phases of the process. I touched on some of this already, but we just wanted to, provide this to the team. Might leave it there for a few more seconds to give those a chance to see it. But it's basically migration planning, mapping, spec, transformation rule establishing, dealing, do we need to do delta or incremental migrations depending on the cutover window and the freeze window time? Having time to extract data, getting full inventory of metadata and or folders depending on the source system, making sure we classify that appropriately, analyzing that data. There's value mappings traditionally, but there could be some enrichment needs that need to be injected in the migration process. All of that gets established in the designing and developing phase, and the transformation is really just running the transformation in Migration Center before it's actually pushed into the target system. So we can look at the accuracy, we can look at relationships between records and documents, the metadata fidelity, et cetera, before we even push it into the target system. And then quality assurance. So that sort of highlights on this slide. Let me go to the next. And at the end of the day, we have a development environment where we conduct the iterations, we do informal testing, we verify 100% of the metadata. Then we go into a formal run, which we do a technical verification, similarly 100% metadata and content, metadata on metadata, 100% metadata, and sampling on content. We actually will be able to do MD5 checksums on content, so that's another thing that's beneficial from a content migration itself. And then production, right? We do internal checks, we do metric based, we do spot checks, and then we compile those formal documentation as part of a production migration in a regulated industry, in particular life sciences. And with that, that is all of the information that I wanted to provide to the team today. I know we have a short video, and we're going to take some questions, of course. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to any questions that come up. And I want to just panel to one more slide rather. And I think Carolina will share some more contact information as well. But I'm going to hand it over to you, Carolina, so we can take a peek at the video, and then we can field some questions.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And I'll give you just a little bit of background here to the video that you're about to see with CARA AI. Now, hopefully you're a little bit familiar with CARA AI already. If you haven't heard about it, then perhaps I'm not doing my job that well at the moment. But it's something that we've been very, very excited about this year, and it's something that we've been promoting really across the board. And the reason for that is CARA AI really can do a lot. The best way for us to communicate that is by talking through specific use cases and ways that they can apply to different industries. However, the beauty of CARA AI is that it's essentially separated into these 6 main areas. So one of them is assisted search. Now, this isn't just, you can search through your regulatory documents. This really means that you can search throughout anything that you can store in CARA. So the webinar today, we were of course talking about archiving, and not just archiving on CARA. We were talking about a solution that was specifically built by FME on CARA for a customer. This means that anyone can really use the CARA AI as long as they choose to have it enabled for anything, whatever their use case is. So I can see that my biggest area here was the knowledge and search generation, which is great because that's one of the best use cases I personally use it for. It just makes it so much easier to be able to find that information you need. So I will now play you our short video. And like we said at the start, if you do have questions at any point, please do post them into the questions tab.
Before I show you a quick demo, 6 key things here. It's fully part of the functionality. So it's built into the UI, it's built into the configuration. We explicitly index things in the most efficient form for AI processing. So it's really part of the core application. And we're looking at doing more than sort of the glossy things of just having AI that maybe saves you a few seconds by classifying a document, and looking to where we can reduce hours, days, weeks into seconds or minutes. Third of all, security and privacy, hugely important. Users will only see information in an AI response that is based on what they can see in real life. So I'm never going to find out something I shouldn't know by running AI. Also, the LLM is only looking at CARA, so it's not going to learn from your information and share with another customer or vice versa. Everything's traced and audited, every question, all the processing, which documents we used, the answers, they're all audited, and we give you a link, as I'll show you in the demo. You can choose which LLM is best for you, or multiple. So instead of, as some vendors do, just hard coding it to one LLM, we say pick your own, have multiple, maybe some are better than others in terms of what they can provide on certain data items. Last but not least, your quality of your response is directly related to the quality of your question. So we've given you a way to define great questions, save them, and give them to users as a single click button. So you'll see some examples of that in the demo. So let's go over to CARA now and take a look. Over here in CARA, I'm going to show you just a few really nice use cases so that you are more tempted to come to our following webinars on AI, where we dive a bit deeper into these things. But for example, I might have a couple of documents in different languages. And if I look at this first one, it's a document in Japanese, it's a product label, and it's very much based on tables, and of course it's in Japanese. This one is in English and contains information in bullet points and completely different layout. I'm going to select these two. I'm going to open my AI assistant and I'm going to say to it, can you compare the indications with the Japanese text in both English and Japanese and do a narrative of major differences? So this is what Japanese customers have to provide, comparing the labels with different countries. And you'll see here that it's got notes, it's got translations, it says whether the indication is present or not. So if there are any that are missing, you'll see that as well over here. So that's one option. Here's another one. So I've got a core data sheet. I'm going to look at that core data sheet just to show you, it's a bunch of information about the product. And I can ask it to generate a patient information leaflet ready for EMA based on the selected document. And you'll see it's giving all the usual blurb that it gives at the beginning of a label, and it's going to give me that label. And I can, of course, generate that out into a document. Speaking of which, let's generate a document now. I'm going to go over here to my translations area. I have a document here which has certain heading styles, it has tables and other information, and I'm going to ask the system to translate it using AI. Now here, crucially, the user has no idea that this is AI, so it's configured behind the scenes in CARA, super easy for the user. So let's just refresh. And now that it's completed, I've got a link to my document, which takes me to the folder in CARA where that document has been translated. And if I preview that, you'll see that it's now got the same heading styles, the same tables and everything else, but translated to French. So that's an example of generating a document and doing translations and hiding the AI behind a button. Let's have one last use case here. I'm going to go to a set of documents that essentially have a bunch of data in them. So these could actually be data objects. In this case, they're a document with data. And I can select to open my AI assistant. And this time you'll see I've actually got a shortcut button behind which is a prompt that somebody has defined for me to be able to generate a 2.3 document in a repeatable format. And you'll see it's got the right heading styles, subheadings, it's got information laid out in bullets, and some things it's going to put into tables. So it's generating all of this information from my associated list of data items. So pretty much any use case that you want to do to turn the LLM to can be done within CARA.
Thank you very much. So that was just a short video here. Now, of course, if you are interested in seeing a little bit more, then we can give you a full demo at some point. So now going back to the slide that we had here about questions, do we have any of those? I've seen a couple of them pop up. So what I'll do is I will read a question out and then I'll direct it to the appropriate person. So the first one I've got coming up here, that's for Frank. Could you elaborate more on the technical go live system use versus the ongoing migration behind the scene?
Good question. Actually, we had, so the go live, so they wanted to be able to go live with the platform as early as they could, knowing that there'll be a migration happening in the background, right? So what we did is, we did a technical go live. So the system was put in place in a productive manner. And there were ongoing, because of the document, the archiving security, right? The data wouldn't be exposed to anyone that's not enabled to see, that archive area, right? So we're able to provide, the solution was able to bring in net new, small demand archives in that space in a productive manner. And in the background, we were setting up, the other additional archive areas and migrating, the 13 plus terabytes in the background, just enabling those users when those archives were completed, those archive areas were completed, then we would enable or activate, those users in that or that archive area, so then they can start using and consuming. So we were able to do both. We didn't have to do big bang, so it was sort of a progression, using the system right out of the gate, day one, and also handling the ongoing migrations as part of the decommissioning of the legacy system.
Lovely, thank you very much. And we've got another one here, which is, how do you manage continuous improvement of processes, data, masks, etc., and CSV? Is there a continuous or automated validation process?
So, I mean, there's a couple of things. There's the ongoing use, right? So there's a lot of metrics and statistics of the system, the platform itself. So we're able to see how, data is being consumed, brought in and consumed. In terms of features, and so one thing I want to, which kind of skirts the edge of the question, is that, there's, in order to maintain the platform in a validated state, but also staying current, right? It's this balancing act, right? So how do I stay current, not let my platform, age, right? And not stay current with latest versions and releases. And based on this implementation and the CARA platform, actually we scripted the releases. Obviously it goes through a pipeline and non-production before it goes to production, but we're able to inject in an automated fashion the updates, the new releases of the CARA platform, and run it through the standard lifecycle. But the provisioning, the implementation is fully automated. So I just wanted to maybe pause there, see if I addressed the immediate question.
Yep, that seems addressed. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone. We are at time now, so thank you all for attending. In the bottom of your screen, there is a links tab, with links to both of our websites. So if you do have any additional questions, you can contact us through there. You are also very welcome to connect with us on LinkedIn. Thank you again for your time, and thank you to Frank and Rex for presenting today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Caroline and Rex.